of Ombudsman has a long history. It can be traced back to the 19th century, to Sweden, where they appointed a Swedish parliamentary ombudsman in 1809. And the role then is very similar to what the role is now and the role that the Cayman Islands Ombudsman will have, which is to protect the interests of the citizen against any malfeasance by the government. So the citizen, if the citizen has a complaint, the Ombudsman will investigate properly and report. The trend in ombudsmans in the UK is to actually combine different ombudsmen into one. So in 2015, in the Queen's speech, they announced that they would combine 20 ombudsman bodies in the UK into one public ombudsman, public service ombudsman as it's called. They've already done a similar type of thing in Ireland and also in some parts of Canada. So we're not actually doing anything unique here or trend-setting. The trend has already been set and it's working successfully in those jurisdictions. Yes, the Ombudsman post is mentioned and detailed in Section 120 of the Constitution. And what it does, it calls for an independent office that reports to a parliamentary subcommittee for performance and budget matters. So the new office, like the offices that have been brought together, are totally independent of the executive arm of government. So although they will report to a parliamentary subcommittee, what it means is that they will only report on performance and they will have their budget set by Parliament. The Parliament will not get involved in dealing with complaints at an operational level. The merger came about as a recommendation from the EY report, and the report suggested that there be a combination of the OCC, that's the Office of the Complaints Commissioner, and the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, and police complaints. So that's where it started, was a recommendation from Ernst & Young. Cabinet has approved the outline business case. What that means is that after the EY report came out, the Cabinet decided they wanted to pursue this recommendation. And back in early 2015, we were given the remit to do an outline business case. And that was presented to Cabinet recently, and they agreed that outline business case. What that means is it gives the green light to go to the next stage in the project, which is to look at timelines, to look at activities that we need to carry out prior to producing what is the final business case. So we will be engaging with the project team in looking at the legislation, looking at the organizational structure, looking at the jobs, looking at the processes and procedures that pertain at the moment to see where we need to change. So yes, that's basically the outline business case. It's not a final case, but it gives us the green light to go ahead and start to do more research and to look at as I say, the processes and procedures. As I said, the outline business case has now been approved, but we will be using the Project Future project management methodology. As with all EY projects, this methodology will be used, and it involves setting out a detailed plan. It sets out assessing the risks of the project. It assesses the type of stakeholder involvement that we need to have in terms of talking to the public, talking to the staff, talking to all those people that are going to be affected by the merger. It involves setting timelines. It talks about setting the work allocation, what member of the project team is going to do what, and to what timeline. So the project future methodology is very detailed, but once we follow that, we're pretty confident that we'll be able to meet the timeline that has been given to us by Cabinet. The project involves bringing together the Office of the Information Commissioner and the Office of the Complaints Commissioner to merge those two. In addition, the police law of 2010 called for a police complaints authority. That has never been set up. The reason for that was that when we looked at the workload involved with police complaints, and when I did my research, it was running at about 2 complaints a week, 100 a year, of which about 10 were more serious complaints. So when we looked at the costing to set up a police complaints authority, a standalone authority, we were looking at approximately $750,000 to set that up. And the government felt that that was not good value for money when we're looking at the workload involved. The police already have a body, a professional standards unit, which deals with complaints against the police. But this is going to be an independent body. So how that will work, we'll still have the professional standards unit. But what they will deal with is the more minor complaints. So if there is an incident where there's a serious injury or death as a result of police activity, or there are other serious incidents, then the Office of the Ombudsman would investigate. Where there are more minor complaints, it would happen in this way. That if there was a complaint against, say, the desk sergeant that was rude or some such complaint, that complaint would be investigated by the police standards unit with probably for an officer that's 1 grade above a sergeant. But the Ombudsman would have the power to investigate all complaints. So even if there are a number of minor complaints against a single policeman, then they might take that over. They see there's a trend of the complaints coming against one person, they might take that over. So what the new Ombudsman Office will have is 2 specialist complaints officers, investigators, that will deal with the more serious police complaints. So the merger will involve is more at the strategic and management level. So there will still be individual units within the Ombudsman Office. So because you need specialists to deal with the different types of complaints, whether it be an FOI complaint or a maladministration complaint or a police complaint. So what you will not get is someone who's dealing with FOI complaints on a Monday will then deal with a police complaint on Tuesday. There will be specialists in each of those areas to be able to deal professionally with each complaint. But there will be a merger of back office functions in terms of finance, HR. There'll be a sharing of office space. Also, it is intended, but sometime in the future, it is intended for the Ombudsman Office to be responsible for other functions. And the 2 that are immediately come to mind are the data protection, which is going to Parliament shortly, and the whistleblower legislation, which has already gone to Parliament. So it's likely that these 2 pieces of legislation will be overseen by the Ombudsman Office. But this is sometime in the future. There's not been a funding for that eventuality. but it's likely to happen, say sometime in the future. The benefits of the merger are both financial and non-financial. Let me deal with the non-financial benefits first. The public will have one agency to deal with now. So when they have a complaint, they don't have to think, is this a maladministration complaint? Is this an FOI complaint? They will be able to go straight to one agency. But let me say that the landscape has changed since the Freedom of Information Law has been implemented. The Information Commissioner's Office has done a great job in training, making the public aware of what's available to them, and have set up, operationally, we've now set up information officers in each department. So most of the complaints are dealt with at the departmental level. And most of the complaints about freedom of information actually are settled at the departmental level. And the same with the Complaints Commissioner Office. They again have done a great job in publicising how to complain and set up complaints officers in each department. So most of the complaints that go to the Complaints Commissioner now are redirected to the agency. So if you have a complaint of maladministration against the Customs Department, if you go to the Complaints Commissioner's Office, they will say, have you gone to the Customs Department and registered a complaint? And if they can't resolve it, then come back to me. So the landscape has changed somewhat, and we feel now that we can offer a much more robust service if they're all in one area. The financial benefits, these are twofold. As I said earlier, the setting up of a police complaints authority under the 2010 police law would have cost around about $750,000. By absorbing it within the Ombudsman's office, we have averted the fact that we have to spend that sort of money. Also, the other financial element is that by bringing the two units together, we're able now to only have one head and not two, and one administrator to support the head. So there's a saving of 2 posts, and that calculates to around about $200,000. What it means is that we can then, with that $200,000, spend it by employing 2 specialist police investigators. Overall, the budget saving will be $83,000. The cost avoidance is around about $750,000. So it has financial benefits, and it also has non-financial benefits, this merger. Next steps, since the Cabinet decision was made last month, we have met with staff. We've informed them about what is going to be expected of them in the future. We've assured them that there will be no redundancies. However, there may be job changes. We will have to look at, as I said, the legislation. We'll have to look at the processes and procedures of the 2 agencies and the policies. We'll also have to look at the job descriptions of the existing staff. Once we have done all that, we would then need to get agreement from the project sponsor, who is Gloria McField-Nixon, who is the chief officer in the portfolio of the civil service. We will then move ahead in terms of, once Cabinet have been given the approval, is to move ahead with recruiting the new Ombudsman, recruiting the police investigators, and looking at the existing staff in terms of what their new job descriptions will say, will they require any grading increases, those types of things. But the staff, we met all the staff and also all the members of the Professional Standards Unit last week to explain exactly what we were doing. So the project sponsor has established a project team to assist with the project. I've been given the job of project manager. We have a technical advisor who is John Epp. John was a previous complaints commissioner and now works for government in a different capacity. We have Christine Cook, who is a legal advisor for the project team. We have Kashkar Hamans, who is also a legal advisor. Carol Bess Gould from the Portfolio of the Civil Service. She will be our HR advisor. Obviously, there's going to be some change management issues. Suzette Ebanks as our communications expert, who is currently head of GIS. And Anthony Ennis. Anthony Ennis, as you know, is the Deputy Commissioner. He's going to be the technical advisor because we want to make sure that the Ombudsman's office and the Professional Standards Unit have a protocol, know how to interact with each other when they're going to be involved and when the Ombudsman is going to be involved in police complaints. So he's our advisor, and he will be reviewing the amendments to the police law that will bring this into action. So, as I say, we've also, to ensure that there's buy-in from the staff, each unit of the staff, each unit has appointed a staff representative or a liaison officer who can bring to the table the technical expertise again. These liaison officers, we're lucky to get the Chief Inspector Raymond Christian, who is from the Professional Standards Unit. We've also been able to get Corey Matson, who is from the Information Commissioner's Office, and Daniel Lee from the Office of the Complaints Commissioner. So that forms a very good team to be able to ensure that there's going to be a successful project. We are planning to complete the project in the third quarter of this year. There are some critical paths in the project, and one is to the extent of which we need to change legislation. And that really has yet to be decided what strategy we're going to use there, whether we're going to keep the three separate pieces of legislation, and the Ombudsman would be called Ombudsman stroke Information Commissioner stroke Complaints Commissioner stroke Police Commissioner, Police Complaints Commissioner. If that is the strategy going forward, then that will reduce the amount of legislative changes we need to laws and regulations. However, if we go for the other option, which is an omnibus law to cover the Ombudsman, then that may require a lot more input from legal drafting, and that may take a little longer than the previous option. So we're yet to decide that. The project team have got a lot of work to do. We've got to look at the three pieces of legislation, the regulations, we have to look at the policies and procedures of each agency, we have to look at staffing, and we have to look at how we're going to develop the interface with the public through e-government, ensuring that all possible avenues are explored to allow for the public to register their complaint, to monitor their complaint, and to actually get successful resolution of their complaint. So there's a lot of work to do, but we are planning to get it completed by the third quarter of this year.